Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's BARCastTV again. Today we're going to be going over a 1v1 build for playing vehicles or armed vehicles. Today we're featuring Darth Revan here, aka XFactor, former BPL winner. Really strong player all around. And his opponent is OzVideo, who's kind of lower here, but I don't think it matters. I was watching XFactor play this and thought it was just a really great showcase of how to open vehicles in the 1v1 context. So this is a fairly standard open. Let me change my settings real here so I can zoom in a little more for y'all. So really standard open, just 3 mechs. Well, 2 mechs, 2 wins, third mechs. He did a little swap there. Not sure if y'all are familiar with that, but you don't quite have enough energy when this mech's, by the time this mech finishes, so you can start building a solar, let your energy build back up a little bit, and then start your finish your mechs. So you need about plus 60 energy per second to finish a factory, whether that's bots or vehicles. So that's why he made this fifth wind turbine. He's just kind of balancing his E relative to the wind speed. So nothing too crazy there. The real meat and potatoes, I think, of playing vehicles in this matchup, because your like basic units are so much more metal heavy. It was a 110 metal for a blitz. Whereas if you're playing bots, you know, they're much cheaper, right? 43. I think the pawn is like 50 something metal now. And the ticks are even cheaper, right? So what XFactor does, and what I would recommend, you know, players to do, is start off making a bunch of scouts. So he goes, what, 2 cons, 40 scouts, 15 blitz. I don't think he quite ends up making the 40 scouts, but we'll see how many he does end up making. But of course, the scouts are fairly cheap. 31 metal, they move fast, they can get you good scouting information, they can harass and keep your cons protected. So here we go. Something to note, like, as your cons do take a bunch of energy to make, 1950. So what you want is to build up a little bit of energy before you start assisting the factory with your commander. Because see, you'll stall fairly quickly as you're assisting this con out. So that's why he added like an additional solar, a few more winds. And then of course, really important thing in 1v1s is really skipping on the LLTs. Like, he makes a few here and there, and that's one thing like these 60 plus OS players are so good at doing, is knowing exactly when and where to make these LLTs. So let's take a look at this build queue. It goes 3 mexes, a radar, which I'll show you that coverage. Pretty nice, right? Units that come into the radar range gives you plenty of time to react and protect this con. And you will see XFactor continuing to create those as he expands. LLT, Mex, LLT. I think we see 2 here, 2 LLTs here, just because this is the only choke point to like the main base. This area is fairly wide open, right? But putting the 2 LLTs here really locks down, so you don't have to worry about attacks from this side, and you just mostly have to focus on attacks coming from like here to this low ground area you're expanding to. And then of course, just continuing to expand. Here's that forward radar we talked about, right? Just want to increase that range. Give you more time to react as units come in. Take a look at the second build queue. X. Really nice radar position here. And then just mexes, LLT, radar, right? Being a little bit safe with these LLTs, but, you know, against someone so low, perhaps you just want to like stay defended and make sure things are buttoned up and you're not taking in any kind of counter damage. Here are the scouts that are coming out, right? We've got 4 on the right side, left side. We got 1 going to mid, 3 going to top. Eventually he should cancel these, right? I don't think he's exactly making 40. Maybe he does. I think it's a troll, to be honest. But what I was really intrigued about is, and I do this myself and learned it some time ago, because it can be so hard. It can be difficult. Like, once you've made these 2 cons, you got to make a few solars. Suddenly you're out of metal, right? Even the lab costs more metal than the bot lab, right? 90 more metal. So when you're out of metal like this, a couple things you can do is set your commander on low priority. This is actually really important. You set your commander on low priority. That way, these expanding cons can use the build power and your available metal to continue making these mexes, right? Which are going to give you more metal, which will use more of your commander's build power. But the nice thing about making scouts, of course, is they are fairly metal cheap. So you can keep making units, keep expanding, and this is what allows you to have a nice stable vehicle open before you start needing to produce tanks. See, we're continuing to make scouts. This is the most scouts I've actually ever seen. 14, I mean, I think 11, 15, somewhere in there. But he's just continuing to make them, right? But the real cool thing here is like these cons are just continuing to expand unabated or not being interrupted, so to speak. Here's an interesting point about playing vehicles versus bots is vehicles have higher movement speed and higher build power, right? So the construction vehicle has 90 build power, 54 speed, whereas the construction bot only has 35 speed and 85 build power. So they do end up expanding more quickly. So you can get, and of course can build LLTs and radars faster as well. So in low numbers, you can trade against grunts with scouts, but really what X Factor is doing here is just sharking around looking for damage, right? Killed one mech over here. He's got another mech over here. Does he end up finding this grave robber? Oh my gosh, this is huge, to be honest. This is like 110 metal, 130 metal, goes down to a 31 metal unit. Ends up losing it, but not the end of the world. And here we go. Now the tanks are coming out. Looks like he must have inserted 2 tanks, right? Just to deal with these 3 grunts, right? Because you can't deal with the grunts with scouts. I mean, the lasers are too accurate and they work. So he just inserted those into the queue. And if you're not familiar with how to do that, all you do is click on the lab, hold Alt, and then either click C or click on the icon, and that'll insert it into the build queue without interrupting. And that also works for, what is it? Hold space, right? I think to insert it into a build queue of like a unit. So here are the couple of scouts. Obviously, what's nice is the radars here. We can clearly see where we need to put the scouts to intercept them before they get on top of our constructor. That's really what you want. Of course, grunts are still decent at kiting blitzes. Not so much at pawns anymore since the balance patch, but yeah, you just pull the low health blitz back, let the full health one get in front, taking the damage, and we're still, of course, sending the scouts out, sharking around, looking for damage. Really cool style here. Still have those 14 scouts coming out. Maybe he'll make a few more that a couple more grunts are showing up on our radar. We see these grunts coming across the map. Haven't really noticed these ones yet. Yeah, and as soon as we spot these grunts over here, X Factor, what does he do? Clears the queue and just starts making tanks. So we've got enough scouts. We just need to move into tank production. And lo and behold, look, we have a little bit of metal in the bank, stalling on energy. So what does that mean? Make some wins, right? Or basic solars. It's close. I mean, we're stalling pretty hard. Minus 290 to 170. Commander is still on low priority. But we've got plenty of units, right? We're going to see these grunts show up on radar here soon enough. This con is protected with an LLT. On the other side of the map, we're still finding damage with those scouts. We're shooing away this bit of harassment here. These grunts show up on radar, so what do? We just move to intercept them with a tank. Trying to chase away units on our doorstep, of course. And still haven't fixed that E issue, but what we did do is make a third con. Now let's see what X Factor does with this. Now we've got full energy bar, full metal bar, boom, con turret. Pretty easy choice there. A lot of these decisions are fairly easy, or macro decisions are fairly easy if you kind of know the basic rules, right? Like no energy, full metal bar, needs to make basic solars. Floating energy, floating metal, make a con turret. Floating energy, make an energy storage, right? So on and so forth. You do want to get into scaling. Now, a lot of times I like to say your fourth con should start scaling energy, but we see X Factor is just using the third one. No big deal. I think it's nice on this map and playing vehicles specifically because, like, as we mentioned before, you expand more quickly with these 2 cons. So it's like you don't need the 3 cons expanding. I mean, it'd be nice, it'd be ideal, but this is like we have metal in the bank and we need energy. So You can even see we're using the commander's build power to kind of fix this a little more. Going to add on 4 wind turbines and then move back to assisting the lab. And of course, all the while, we're just continuing to make blitzes. We sent some across the map, trying to find some damage. Really, as a newer player, you might not necessarily need to do that. The real important thing, of course, is just defending these expanding cons, which are kind of doing that themselves, right? They're adding on these LLTs, which look at the spacing on that. They kind of... There's no gap between them. There's a small gap here on the right side of the map, but not the end of the world. Of course, this is protecting between these two. Of course, bots can traverse across these hills. Got a little bit of run by here on the right side. And here's another little kind of benchmark, so to speak. 6 minutes, 45 seconds into the game, we're making 3 more cons. This is really interesting, right? And something I've learned from Ragna is basically think of like scaling and making units kind of as a pendulum, right? Which can swing back and forth between army and I guess I'll just call it greed. Right? And you want to swing this pendulum almost like a switch, right? Between just making straight units, no army, or no eco, no tech, no build power, or in the form of cons, right? And only making army, which is kind of what we saw for a few moments in the game. Like initially when the game started, we made 2 cons, right? So pendulum is towards the greed side. Then we only made rovers and tanks. That's the army side. Once we feel comfortable, we're pressuring, we're on our opponent's side of the map, we can switch it back to greed. Queue up 3 cons. Let's see what they do. So 4th con is going to assist. If I'm not mistaken, it comes over here and assists this con. Not before making a con turret, but we can see accessing E, metal in the bank. That just means make a con turret. 5th con. Basically, these 2 cons end up assisting these 2 expanding cons. So you just go into more of expanding more quickly, right? So yeah, so this con's going to come over here, assist this. This con is we're going to have like a 3rd arc of expansion, so to speak. And we're doing the same thing, just adding mexes, radars, and LLTs. 5th con assists that, right? So what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're up to 5 cons expanding now. And how many cons does he adds 1 more con. We'll see what happens, right? But I'm still in this like, okay. Sorry, there's a lot of things to cover right here, but so we're accessing a decent amount of E, and it's a good time to put down this energy storage. Maybe you could make the argument we could have made it slightly earlier, but XFactor just makes what, 1, 2, 3 energy storage and then back into scaling wind. Really, he doesn't want to pull this away to make con turrets, so I think that's why he made this con here. And we can see metal in the bank, full energy bar. That means add on additional build power in the form of 2 con turrets. And I think he actually even just starts scaling wind with another con as well. So, I mean, you can very well go up to 4 cons scaling wind. The typical configuration you'll see is like con turrets like this around the factory. So all of these con turrets should be able to assist a factory. And then you have cons scaling wind underneath these con turrets as well. So the con turret will just flip between assisting wind turbines and the lab. As soon as one finishes, they'll just swap over to the other. This is very balanced, right? Not egregious. Like there's a difference between stalling energy and having no energy. And this is kind of the latter, right? Very closely balanced right here. Just going to add on a couple more wind turbines with the commander to help fix this issue. And as these con turrets come online, you need additional wind as well. It's not like when the con turret finishes, we were perfectly balanced on E, so to speak, but you still need to increase your E to utilize that build power. And a commander is still on low priority, but what's nice about this is if you have the metal and the energy, the commander will use all of it. So it's not like you're kind of losing anything by placing this commander on low priority. And there's a lot of little tricks in this game. Can cover them later, but yeah, this is really nice, right? And of course, we've kind of swung the pendulum back. We're just only making army, just blitzes on repeat, essentially. 5 cons expanding, 2 cons scaling win, commanders in the main base. This is a really nice style. I would recommend newer players just keep the commander in the main base.
You are now playing. You are now playing.
So hopefully this is illuminating. I don't really want to cover too much more. This is more than enough to kind of get you through the open. I'll zoom out. We'll let this play through. So if you've made it this far, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know if this is the kind of videos you want to see more of. Gotta do, you know, big team games, small team games, 1v1s. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the next cast. Of course, let's breeze through this and see. Hey, this game should end fairly shortly, right? But we're just going to overwhelm our opponent now with blitzes, essentially. Still not adding on build power. Actually, that was a cute little trick we saw. So when you have this much energy storage, we see X Factor just reclaimed those 3 basic solars. So you can kind of return that metal into your economy. Of course, reclaiming returns 100% of the metal of a structure. And one thing I always like to point out is energy storage and basic solars basically cost the same thing. So whereas one provides 6,000 energy storage, got 20,000 energy storage, which is really nice, comfortable blanket. And a basic solar only produces 20 energy per second. So looks like we added on a few more cons. Let's see what we do with those. We're just going to use them to create an additional expansion path. So what is that? 1, 2, 3, kind of 4 lanes we can expand into. And yeah, we're just continuing to scale the build power, right? So we noticed this, we got a nice bit of metal in the bank. We're going to add on some construction turrets and then move into a second factory. It looks like X Factor's choice is the air lab. Of course, you could go in a bot lab, but most of the time you start like what bots. This is what I'd recommend: vehicles and then air. As far as like going onto labs, and most of the time when you move on to vehicle and an air lab, you'll see players just kind of reclaim the bot lab. The tech is not as good when you've reached this like kind of mid game. Of course, res bots are still insane, but the units in and of themselves, like the grunts, pawns, maybe not pawns because they're super sick now, but anyways, something to keep in mind. So once again, thanks for watching. Hope this was illuminating. Love to see players' takes on how to do different opens, and I definitely learned a little bit myself watching this. So thanks again. Cheers. See you in the next video.